I want to talk fiscal policy in a bit, but just real quick, like because the Fed has been such a big factor in markets and all of that. Does the election matter for the Fed, especially with respect to moving ahead with rate cuts? I mean, is that a factor at all in their calculus?
Yeah. So it's interesting because, of course, we especially when Fed Chair Powell gave that sort of surprisingly dovish press conference, sort of the pivot in December, there was a lot of narrative about, is he doing this to help Joe Biden and his reelection bid? Janet Yellen, the Secretary of the Treasury, had just been talking about the high interest expense for the U.S. debt. So there was a lot of, I think, chatter, even internally, about sort of the political motivations of Powell. I would say, and we have the benefit of having Rich Clarida, who's the vice chair of the Fed here at PIMCO, back at PIMCO, and he corroborates this, that the Fed is really going to be impervious to the election cycle, just in general. If you actually look at going back to the 1980 election cycles, the Fed has either cut or raised rates at every cycle except for in 2012, when actually they used their balance sheet to do some QE. So they're not afraid to move, right? Either way. Now, if you look at the Taylor rule would suggest that sometimes they should have probably hiked more than they did in an election year. But the cutting is actually they're very willing to cut in an election year. So I think we should assume this year that is going to be the case, that Powell is impervious to these election cycle, these sort of political dynamics. And if anything, I actually think he is so focused on the legacy of the Fed, his own legacy, but the legacy of the Fed as being an independent, nonpartisan institution, that I think that will be even more true this year. I mean, of course, remember, his term lasts until May of 2026. We get a lot of questions from clients about this. Like, will Powell be fired on day one if Trump is, and actually, like, Trump can't do that. He actually doesn't have the power to do that. Now,
does he know that? Is he aware of that?
Details. But, so he may try, but in terms of actually being able to effectuate that, he will likely not be able to do that. So I'll say that, like, even more so, Powell's going to be sort of impervious to this because he has job security through, May of 2026. He probably doesn't want to be chairman again. So he's, again, more focused on the legacy of the Fed and his own legacy.